An unusual title for a Christmas sermon, or an Advent sermon, Jesus Says Goodbye. I'm indebted to Max Lucado for many of the concepts in this sermon. The heavy door creaks as Jesus pushes it open, as he has done 1,000 times. He's come to make a final visit before he leaves Nazareth to venture out into the wider world. As he opens the wooden shutters, sunlight pours in and illuminates the familiar sights, the tools, the sawhorse, the wood. He and his dad have spent countless hours here together, and his younger brothers joined them as they got older. He picks up the hammer and welcomes the weight of it like an old friend. He touches the sharp teeth of the saw, and he remembers the importance of taking care of his tools. He runs his hand over the smooth wood of the most recent project, finished just before his neighbor needed it. He could be happy staying here. Life's comfortable. He remembers his youngest days when he would play as his dad worked. And he remembers getting a little older and making toys as his first projects, which he would give to the children in the synagogue. Then there was that first time his dad trusted him to help with a real project. All his memories in this carpentry shop have been happy ones. He never doubted the importance of what he was doing here. He always knew it was productive work, taking raw materials and making something both useful and beautiful. He took pride in his work. He remembers the first time someone hired his dad to make a chair that was needed quickly. And he heard the pride in his dad's voice when he said, "Don't worry, sir. We'll get it finished on time. I'll get Jesus to help me." He loved working with his dad, but he always knew it wasn't forever work, that this is not where his life would be invested. Recently, he's become increasingly aware that the time has come, the time to leave. But he couldn't leave without saying goodbye to this carpentry shop. He picks up a nail and rolls it between his fingers. He strokes a rough timber, careful not to get a splinter. He considers for a moment how the lessons learned in carpentry have applications outside these walls. As important as a plumb line is in construction, it's equally important in moral standards. As a plane is useful to shave away unnecessary roughness in wood, there were some unnecessary traditions in his faith community that needed to be shaved away. As a drawer benefits from a snug dovetail to open and close smoothly, so too do relationships demand faithfulness to run smoothly. And all his time poring over a ledger has taught him the importance of honesty in all his dealings. But the time had come. He knew he had a father besides Joseph. He had always known that. His mother had told him about the prophecy, about his cousin John, about his own conception before she and Joseph were married. She was honest with him about how hard that was for them, but that God had given them strength to get through when everyone around them looked askance. She did not explain it to them. How do you explain that God has broken through and touched earthly lives? And now, though life here was good and business was going well, the work was enjoyable and the future looked bright, he knew it was time. His father was calling him. The children would miss him. He knew he was a favorite with the neighborhood children. He was good with a joke and often brought laughter with him wherever he went. Part of him wanted to bargain with his father. I could do a good job here in Nazareth. I could settle down, raise a family, be a leader here. I could tell people about you here from Nazareth, from this shop. But he knew it was no good. He had read the prophecies. He knew that his purpose would not be fulfilled in Nazareth. This shop was not his destiny. He had read Isaiah 53, and he knew the prophet was speaking of him. He grew up before him like a young plant, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or comeliness that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that made us whole, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Well, there was more. The prophet spoke of being oppressed and afflicted, but not opening his mouth to defend himself. The prophet compared him to a lamb that is led to slaughter, and a grave with the wicked, though he had done nothing wrong. And the prophet spoke of him making himself an offering for sin. He knew that these were not things that would be done to him, but that he would give himself as an offering for sin. And as he took his final look around the carpentry shop, a voice whispered in his ear, "You don't have to go. All that writing about wounded for their transgressions, being like a lamb led to slaughter, you don't have to do it. You can say no." But Jesus knew which choice he would make. He and his Father were so close, they were as one. Rejecting his Father's plan wasn't something Jesus would even consider. Though as he continued to roll that nail in his fingers and touch that rough, unsanded wood, a shudder ran through him. He remembered some faces he had seen in the last couple of years, some wrinkled, some weeping, some hidden behind veils, some obscured by fear, some were earnest with searching, some were blank with boredom. He saw those faces now in this quiet moment, and he knew their need better than they did. He had also heard their voices, helpless cries of the poor, bitter accusations of the abandoned, the despair of those who were trying to save themselves. He knew their hearts, and he knew there was only one thing that would satisfy the longing of their hearts, and this meant he had to leave. As he removed his hand from that rough wood and he set the nail down on the workbench, he turned toward the door. He had already said his goodbyes to his mother. He had wondered if she would weep, but she didn't. She seemed to understand. She embraced him, and she looked into his eyes, and he knew without her saying a word that she understood, really understood. If he could have, though, he would have spared her the coming pain that would pierce her heart. And then he walked through the door into the sunshine. As he closed the door behind him, he looked up into the morning sky and smiled. He and his Father had always loved beginnings. Amen.